This is the Safe Secure 360 podcast. There is safety in numbers.
This is the Safe Secure 360 podcast. The information provided in our podcasts is for general information uses only and is not intended as legal advice. The views and opinions expressed by the guests are their own. Always consult with a qualified professional before making safety and security decisions. For more information about this topic, check out our website at SAFESECURE360.com.
Welcome back to the Safe Secure 360 podcast. We've been asked recently about handgun ownership and maybe handgun ownership for the first time. So we're doing a podcast today about that. Hopefully some of your questions can be answered. We're not trying to encourage you to buy or not buy a handgun, but a lot of questions can be asked, and perhaps we'll provide some insight for you to learn if handgun ownership is right for you.
I personally am really interested in this. My wife and I just bought a home. I've been married a couple years, and I feel different than I felt in an apartment about part of my responsibility is protection of the home. And so you are an FBI, NRA, and DPS certified police firearm instructor with more than 30 years of experience teaching firearms and handgun experience. So you're the perfect person for me to talk to about this. But I want a handgun I'm curious about getting a handgun for my home personal defense. What can you tell me about when would be a good time to get that? How do I know I'm ready for a handgun?
I think it starts with why. Why do you want a handgun, and why do you want one now? Well, you told me that some things have changed. You're recently married, you're starting a family, you have a home. Those things can change on the good side. The other motivations or decisions that may lead you to handgun purchase may be a tragic event that occurs or some type of incident that you were involved in where you perhaps were threatened or harmed and thought, if I only had a handgun, maybe I'd be safer. Mm-hmm. So I think it starts with why do you want one? Exploring why do you want to have the firearm is very important. I think the second step is what does your family think about this decision? It's a big decision. What does your family think about this decision? A lot of factors to consider. Is your wife or husband open to the idea? Do you have children? How old are they? Do you have a lot of guests come by your house? Do you have a lot of guests come by your house with children? Those are all things to consider, as well as what will you do with the gun? Will you plan to carry it with you every day? Will you keep it in your vehicle? Will you keep it at home? Is it strictly a home firearm defense tool? Where will you keep it and how will you use it? Those are very important things to consider on the front end before you go out and make that purchase.
Absolutely. I think for me, why don't we talk first about residential and home handgun ownership, and then let's talk about right to carry and carrying and having it in your car as we go. What does the law say about my right to have a gun at home? I must be allowed to have one, but what is the legal implications of having a gun and using it at home?
I'll give you my opinion about the statutes. And it begins with the federal statutes, obviously. The Second Amendment broadly talks about the right of arming yourself and having firearms. Then I think the next level to talk about are states. Some states are pro-gun ownership, some states are anti-gun ownership, and I think then after that the cities become involved with laws and ordinances that may be impactful to you. So I'll talk about Texas. Texas is a constitutional carry state. We love our firearms in Texas. And firearms really, when I talk about them, it's broad, pistol, rifle, shotgun, all different types of long and short guns. But Today, we're talking about handguns specifically. A handgun is a firearm or a gun that is designed to be fired with one hand. Now, you certainly can grip the gun and then have a secondary grip to grip it as well, but a handgun is typically a firearm that you fire or can be fired with one hand. Typically, they're small. It could be called a pistol or a handgun, or that type of firearm differentiates between a rifle or a shotgun, which are longer. So the Texas law really talks about handguns as far as training and regulation and ability to purchase and ability to carry. The law doesn't talk too much about shotguns and rifles. So handguns, by nature of their concealability and by nature of their being able to have multiple rounds of ammunition available to them, make them more concerning to people and more concerning to regulate, and increase the need for personal training before you begin to use or carry a firearm. SAFESECURE 360. We are a security consulting group located in the Woodlands, Texas. We assist our multiple clients by reducing their risk, loss, and reputation impact. We also do full security assessments on their facilities, large churches, large private schools in Texas, and we want to help you. Take a look at our website, safesecure360.com.
What kind of personal training should I consider when I'm looking at getting a handgun? It seems like a good idea to understand a tool before you get it. So what kind of training would I look up? A firearms certification class? What would I be looking for training?
Well, let's talk about Texas, specifically about ownership, first of all. Are you eligible to own or to possess or to have or to buy a firearm? I won't go through all the details. I'll refer you to the Texas statute and to the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms website. But I'll tell you, in Texas generally, if you're 21 years of age and you're a Texas resident and you don't have a final felony conviction, you're not under indictment, and you're not addicted to drugs or been deemed mentally incompetent. There's certain regulations, but generally, if you meet that criteria, being 21 years old and a resident in Texas and a responsible person, you can purchase a handgun through a federal firearms licensed dealer. That could be as simple as Academy or Bass Pro Shop or one of those places. But also in Texas, you can do a party-to-party purchase where you can purchase a handgun from another individual who's not licensed by the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And that is a private party sale. A lot of people do that at gun shows and are able to sell without going through a long, extensive background check, which is another very important thing, that if you purchase a handgun in the state of Texas from a federal firearms licensee, they are required, and you are required, to give them information on a federal document that says that you're eligible and you don't have any of these other reasons why you could not own a gun. And then that person phones in your application request to a federal number, and then they can give you an immediate approval, or they can give you a delayed approval, or they can reject your purchase. So, first of all, being eligible to possess the firearm is real important. If you're younger than 21, you cannot purchase a firearm, and certainly, though, if you had an older family member who takes you shooting or teaches you about shooting while they're in their presence, that's fine. But the handgun is very important to be familiar with the statutes and the laws and get the right training.
Absolutely. When I'm eligible, I'm at a dealer that has a variety of guns. How do I choose one that fits my needs? What are my needs related to a handgun, and how do I choose what criteria should I look at to choose one?
People ask me a lot which handgun is right for me, and it's a complex answer, really, because I don't know what your plans are, if you're going to carry it on you, if you're going to leave it somewhere, if you're just going to have it at home. It can affect the size of the handgun. Your hand can be small or your hand can be large, and there are pistols and handguns that are large and small. So I think that going to a gun range or going to a gun show and taking a look at different types of handguns may be a good step in determining which one feels comfortable to you before you even shoot it. Is it too heavy? Is it too large? Is it too small? Could this fit in a holster that I plan to carry? Is it too large? And then after you've decided that the size is appropriate for you, then I suggest that you decide if you want a revolver, which is a manually rotating gun from still currently produced and still a great weapon, but an older gun that you may see a cylinder that turns as the person shoots the gun. Typically they hold 5 or 6 bullets, and you have to reload it after you've used them all. Where you contrast that with a semi-automatic firearm, handgun, pistol, which does not require rapid or frequent reloading because they're magazine fed, or they're fed from a source that fits into the base of the gun and can range from 10 to 25 bullets available to you in a standard capacity magazine. So if you want a revolver, there are certain advantages to that. If you want a semi-automatic handgun, there are certain advantages to that. But I think another thing to consider is the caliber of the gun. There are many calibers of guns. Typically, a pistol could be a .22 caliber gun, which is a very small bullet. And then it could be a .32, or it could be a .380, or it could be a 9mm. It could be a .38, a .357 Magnum. It could be a .45 long Colt, all the way up to a .50 caliber pistol bullet. So I think that for purposes of this podcast, I think that recommending the range of bullets would be in a revolver, a .38 or .357 Magnum. They can both shoot similar rounds. And I think in a semi-automatic gun, a 9mm is a good choice. It's readily available, it's not expensive, and it is a general purpose round that can be used for practice and also has implications for protection.
So I am at the dealer. I've found a gun. I like that idea of just holding it and see if it feels right to me. I like that idea. And I've talked about it. I found a good 9mm I like, for instance. What else should I buy there? What about cleaning and maintenance? What goes into the maintenance of having a gun?
Yes, that's a good question. Let me go back one moment about selecting the gun. At the gun show, certainly, you can't shoot the gun. But you can feel it in your hand. You can say, look, this is obviously too big for me. Maybe go with a friend who has guns, or an instructor friend of yours who can give you advice about which ones to look at to save yourself some time. And then once you've decided or ruled in or ruled out a certain caliber or a certain size or certain mechanism, then it's time to go to the gun range. And if you go with a friend who has a gun, that's a great way to go and experience the sound, the recoil, the loading, the safety steps that you need to take. But I think going to a range, sometimes if you don't have a friend who has a gun that they will let you use and help you, a lot of gun ranges have rental guns where you can rent that gun and say, like, I'd like to try several guns. Do you have rental guns? And typically they do. So when that happens, you can rent, I want to rent a revolver. I want to shoot a semi-automatic gun or several types of them. And that's a real good way to shoot it. So a gun is a tool. It's a machine. It's an instrument that doesn't do anything on its own. Mm-hmm. It has to be given instructions, and it has to be given ammunition, and it has to be certain things have to happen before it is able to fire or shoot a bullet. So just like with any machine, like your car or any machine, maintenance and cleaning, keeping that machine in good running condition, very critical. Mm-hmm. So buying a good general purpose gun cleaning kit and being real deliberate about after you shoot your gun each time, cleaning it. They're typically very easy to, these firearms, some of them disassemble in 2 or 3, 4 pieces. Some of them do not disassemble. And you certainly take your cleaning kit, which is very simple to use, and clean your firearm. And once it's clean, lubricate it, and then it's ready to go. So I think that that is a step that a lot of people miss, or they discount the cleaning part of it, which is very important, because if it is cleaned, it's less likely to malfunction, it's less likely to have any problems when it's firing, and you're more likely to have a consistent ability to shoot that firearm safely. Mm-hmm.
What about bullets? Is there a shelf life on bullets? Is that something I need to replace over time, or can I just buy it with the gun and I have them?
Well, that's a good question, too. In law enforcement, I recommend that the bullets that you carry be changed out pretty frequently. No more, in my opinion, no more than a few months, 6 months maybe. Take that gun to the range and shoot that old ammunition and buy a new one. The modern ammunition cartridges today are produced, especially if you buy from a large brand like Federal or Winchester or somebody like that. They are very tightly engineered, and they are water resistant, and they are dust resistant, and they can fire under very tough environmental conditions. But why take the chance if you can shoot that ammunition and recycle it into new ammunition? If you have some ammunition that you don't want to shoot, or that you feel is too old, or it looks like it's tarnishing, or there's some sign that you looked at the ammunition, it just looks old, don't throw it away in the trash. That could be very dangerous. Take it to a gun store and let them dispose of it. They will. They'll be glad to help you dispose of that ammunition. Mm-hmm. So I think changing out ammunition at least every 6 months is a good idea, depending on the environment. If you're outside and you're in the environment, humidity is a factor, moisture is a factor, heat is a factor. If you're exposing that ammunition to consistent types of environmental impacts like that, it may be a smart thing to do for you to cycle it more often. Mm-hmm. But those are my general thoughts about that. Maybe 6 months.
And when I bring the gun home, help me think through what a good place to put it would be. Do I need a gun safe, or is it enough to put it in a safe place? What are some guidelines I could think about regarding that?
That's a good question. There are a lot of different places that you can store a firearm. When I teach the license to carry in the state of Texas, a lot of the curriculum is talking about the safe storage of a firearm, and they use the term readily accessible. Those are all really good terms. And the purpose of citing those different languages and words is that you certainly don't want someone to access the firearm inappropriately. You certainly don't want someone to use the firearm in a manner that is not good. So storing that firearm and keeping ammunition in it where it's ready to fire are challenges that you have to think about. There certainly are gun lockers and gun boxes. Some of them are biometrically open with your fingerprints. Some of them are keyed to open. You can take those storage lock boxes and put them by your bed or under your bed or bolt them to something. So I think the balance is, can you keep the firearm safe, but can you also access the firearm reasonably during a time of need?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a full spectrum. Some people will take their firearm and put it in the nightstand next to them, fully loaded, ready to go. Some people will take their firearm and lock it in a gun locker or a gun safe, and then take the ammunition and put it in a separate locker or a separate gun safe or somewhere way back in their closet. So now you have a firearm that is safeguarded in that box.
Certainly.
However, where's the ammunition? It's another place. So now time becomes a component that you have to wonder, in a time of need or emergency or crisis, and I'm considering using force or deadly force to protect myself or to protect someone else, is it reasonable for me to have to go and access the rounds, bring them back, load the gun? While all this is going on, some event is playing out in front of you in which you may consider using that firearm to protect yourself. So it's a challenge. So what about your vehicle? Where do you keep it? In the glove box, under the seat, in a locker? There's many different ways to do it, but I think the main thing to think about when you're deciding is safety.
Mm-hmm.
Who can get to that firearm that's not supposed to? And children are the big warning sign. The training is quite clear, and the cases are quite clear that if a child, especially, it talks about this, if a child accesses a readily available firearm and uses that firearm, accessing it's one thing. If they use it, they could use it on themselves, they could use it on someone else, they could think it's a toy, they could bring it to school with them. There's a lot of problems that come with that for you as the owner of that firearm. You must be responsible and take measures to safeguard it, because if something goes wrong, you will be held responsible for it. So it's a heavy burden, but if you're responsible and you think this through and you get good training, it's workable.
So it sounds like a guide. You want to balance safety and accessibility. Those are the two extremes of what we're talking about. Speaking of heavy burdens, I hope I would never have to ever have to use this on a person. I would absolutely hate it. But if someone came in my house, what happens now legally about, let's say, an intruder's in my house? How do I announce myself to them? Is that a good idea? And then what are the legal things that happen here? It seems like a gray area to me about what am I allowed to do. I don't know
I'll give you my opinion. I'm not an attorney, and I encourage you to seek out your own legal advice. But let's back up and let's start before you're making those decisions and talk about training.
Mm-hmm.
In Texas, we have a license to carry training class that was developed by the Texas Department of Public Safety. It's a very good class. It's a minimum of 4 hours, longer with other things, but it takes a person through the legal aspects and explains to them what force is, what deadly force is, what the use of deadly force is reasonable, and when can you use force or deadly force to protect yourself from another's use of force or deadly force against you. Also, the training will teach you about de-escalation and how to avoid an armed confrontation. Also, the training will teach you about protection of property and protection of yourself or a third person, and protection of yourself in your home or your vehicle. Because each one of these aspects has interesting information about it, and they're all different.
Mm-hmm.
My advice to any new handgun owner, although they may say, well, Texas is a constitutional carry state, I don't need a license, or I don't need that in-depth training, I encourage you to take it, because it is very good. You could even take portions of it now online.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you complete the online aspect of it, you can find a licensed to carry DPS approved instructor on their website. And you can go to them and demonstrate your firearm proficiency with them. They will watch you shoot 50 bullets, mm-hmm. and they will certify that, yes, you are able to operate and you're proficient with the weapon generally on a target. And that's the second phase of the license to carry. Once you get that, then you're granted a license to carry license. However, that doesn't mean carry it everywhere. It doesn't mean carry it anywhere. There are a lot of restrictions in this training. A lot of the training is talking about when you cannot carry and when you cannot carry and places you cannot carry, and they're reasonable places. Handguns and alcohol don't really fit. Handguns in large events with a lot of people there don't really fit. Handguns in governmental meetings or places that you vote or a hospital or a nursing home or a school, there's going to be certain places that are statutorily prohibited from you to go into. And you'll see sometimes 30-06 or 30-07 signage outside of a business or a school, and it tells you the carrying of an open carry weapon or a concealed carry weapon is prohibited. Mm-hmm. So when you see that, you must abide by those rules. So the license to carry training is not only about orienting you to the statutes about what you can do, it's also educating you about what you cannot do. It's a great course, and I highly recommend that people take it.
It sounds really useful and interesting to have somebody seasoned with this that understands all of the rules that can help explain your individual questions to you. If I was going to buy a tool this powerful, I would really like somebody that knows how to use it to help me understand what I'm holding. I think that's a really great idea. That class sounds really interesting.
Yes, the class is just the beginning. Once you've taken that class, now it's time to learn more. So I think finding a trusted friend who's a shooter, going to the range and practicing mm-hmm. With your weapon that you recently purchased is a good idea. I think seeking instruction from private instructors is a good idea in perhaps low light or situational shooting. There's a lot of training that can occur, and there are some great instructors out there who teach this to make you more responsible and teach you scenarios in which you would use a weapon, or you could, or when you could not.
Speaking of training in the range, what's a good frequency for me to brush up my skills and go to the range? Is that something I should do once a month, every 6 months, once a year? What kind of?
Oh, I think, it's up to you and your schedule, but remember that sometimes the firearm or handgun becomes a hobby. Mm-hmm. And you may do it and shoot and become more and more proficient. You may have contests with your friends as to who's going to shoot better today. So it can be something that could be enjoyed once a month or more frequent. It depends on you and your schedule. Range fees that you pay are typically low. $10 maybe, or $15 maybe to go, maybe $15 to go and shoot. Be sure and wear eye protection and hearing protection to make sure that you're safe, and follow all the gun rules there, and the gun range rules, very important. But I think seeking out a qualified instructor and having them help you progress is a great idea.
Now, throughout all of this, we've talked about what would be good ways to, if I can talk to my family appropriately, if I can pass the background checks, if I can go take my license to carry class. These are all enforcing me to go, towards my steps of getting a gun. Are there any signs that would or some warning signs that would encourage me not to get a gun? Is there anything that would encourage that type of thing?
I think as I said, I think it starts with your family discussing, look, is this going to be right for us? Is this something that we would want to introduce into our home? And is this something we could do? I mean, could you use force, or could you use deadly force if you had to, if there was no other way around it? It's a personal decision. It's a moral decision. It's a decision that could greatly influence you buying or not buying a weapon. But then I think going to the range and with a friend, or going to rent a gun at a range and shooting it, is that right for you? Is the recoil too much? Is it too loud? Does it jump too much? Does it shock you when you shoot it as far as the recoil? Is that too much for you? And or is it something that you can learn to do? I think it's a personal decision that you have to make, but being exposed to handguns in those small steps is probably the best way to make an overall decision.
It sounds like if I could sum up the whole thing, it sounds like a reasonable approach would be to go slowly towards gun ownership, especially with your first gun, and to use the resource of somebody more qualified than you that can help guide you not only in picking one out, but in the proper steps of how to buy, manage, and take care of, and your legal rights with the gun.
That's right. Responsible gun ownership is the goal. And there's a lot of moving parts to get there. But if you feel like that's something that you want to do it slowly. And the license to carry class is not required in Texas to own a handgun. However, I strongly encourage you to do it because it just prepares you more for that new thing. You may also want to consider insurance, extra insurance that covers handgun-related things. There's several companies that offer that, and they insure you and have an attorney available for you if, in fact, you did, in fact, use force. Very unlikely that you will in your entire life, but if you did, they're able to guide you through that process and give you certain protections that you may need.
Well, thank you so much for all the insight. I learned a lot today. This is another one that was personal to me, so thank you for talking to me about it.
Well, you're welcome. Stay tuned to our podcasts as we change topics and publish our newest ones. You're listening to the Safe Secure 360 podcast. Thank you for watching.
Well, thank you for listening. We could not do this show without you, the audience, and we're very grateful for you. To hear more about what we're talking about, go ahead and go over to our website, SAFESECURE360.com, or look for new episodes of our show. Feel free to like and subscribe, follow us, tell your friends about us. We're here to offer something to you, and we're so glad for your support in doing it. Thank you.
Safe Secure 360 podcast. There's safety in numbers.